Okay, we may start whenever competitors you are ready.
Okay, so judges ready, opponents ready, teammates ready. My speech starts now. We stand pro on the resolution result. In China, increased spending on welfare programs is more effective at alleviating poverty than increased spending on public infrastructure. For our framework, the judge should focus on reducing the harm and incidence of poverty for most vulnerable members of society. If Pro can prove that increased spending on welfare programs can reduce harm in most vulnerable members of society, then Pro should win this debate. Contention 1, devolve safety nets. Job loss is inevitable and it creates needs for social safety nets. According to Green 2017, Oxford University academics Carver said up to 40% of all current jobs will fall in victim automation within 15 years. Rural DBOP program improves recipients' well-being. According to Han 2020, there was a robust positive effect of rural DBOP participation on recipients' life application. Empirical evidence suggested that welfare programs such as rural DBOP can help improve recipients' subjective well-being. Even with mistargeting, there was a reduction in poverty. According to Gao 2014, poverty gap and severity were reduced by 16 and 25 percentage points respectively in 2017. The benefit they received was essentially higher in 2007 than in 2002, which in turn led to a greater poverty reduction in 2007 than in 2002. DBOP corrected this body and it should be explained by increased spending, according to Gao 2014. Survey conducted by the NBS shows that 3.8% of urban residents received DBOP in 2007, and among those recipients, 73.4% received the benefit for less than 3 months. Contention to healthcare, sub-point A, lack of doctors. Hospital overcrowding is a massive problem in China due to lack of doctors. According to Sully 2020, China has 1 general practitioner for every 6,666 people, compared with the international standard. Hospitals are understaffed and overwhelmed. Specialists are overworked, seeing as many as 200 patients a day. The deficiency in doctors had taken on more urgency as Chinese government grapples with the mounting health problems of its vast population. According to Robert 2018, poor health traps community in poverty. Infectious disease kill weaken millions of the poorest and most vulnerable people each year. Subpoint B, lack of medical aids. According to Reuters 2016, China's medical bills rise steeply. Patients and their family are increasingly turning to loans to pay for healthcare, adding to the country's debt. And welfare solves this problem. Moreover, according to Haifang 2019, by 2017, more than 1 billion people in China were covered by catastrophic medical insurance, and 11 million people received extra benefit for more than 30 yuan. In 2017, through medical aids, 56.2 million people received subsidies, and 35.2 million people received on average 757 yuan to cover out-of-pocket expenses. But we need more. While public health insurance reached nearly all of the Chinese 1.4 billion people, its coverage is basic, leaving patients liable for about half the total healthcare spending. Contention 3, education. Lack of school is not the key problem, but lack of high-quality teacher is what caused the cycle of poverty. China doesn't have school overcrowding problems. According to MAC 2020, each class averages only 35 students, and teaching welfare programs in China are underfunded, which lead to a loss of high-quality teachers. According to On 2018, the gap between urban and rural teachers' salaries and benefit has led to one-way mobility of rural teachers, resulting in the loss of quality teachers and giving rise to structural shortages in rural school. Rural school teachers had additional income of only 13%, while urban school teachers had 82% and key school teachers had as high as 100%. The percentage of teachers transferring out of the village school remained at 7.6% or more. And according to UNESCO 2020, education is critical to escape from poverty and to prevent transmission of poverty between generations. 1 year of education is associated with 10% increase in wages. Thus, when it comes to increasing spending, education is an aspect which welfare program is more effective than infrastructure. For these reasons, we urge a pro ballot. Thank you.
And my constructive speech starts now. We negate the resolution. Contention 1 is poverty alleviation, resettlement, or PAR. Spatial disadvantage is one of the main reasons for chronic poverty in China. Remoteness, infertile soil, and weak economic integration makes it difficult to make progress of using general poverty reduction measures such as DBOP and medical care programs. Presently, the implementation of PAR is accelerating. According to the latest official white paper, 2.8 million impoverished people will be resettled in 2018, which means China will resettle approximately 10 million of the poor population between 2016 and 2020. The resettlement has had positive impacts on improving the livelihood security and housing quality of migrants through better public services. In March 2020, the Chinese government government announced that more than 9.2 million people had escaped poverty through ARSP, moving farmers out of their villages and into consolidated settlements, and transforming their livelihood activities from inefficient agriculture and forced production to non-farm activities with higher income. Contention 2 is school overcrowding. School overcrowding in China leads to negative effects on students' learning, which makes it hard for them to advance higher education. The only solution is the construction of new schools. According to China Daily 16, a provincial survey conducted in 2015 showed that more than 40% of classes in primary and middle schools were oversized in Shandong. In China's most populated province, Henan, the average class size is more than 100. 3 in 4 students commonly share one desk. Adverse effects of overly populated classrooms can hinder education as students receive less one-on-one attention. According to Finn and Gerber 05, school overcrowding is detrimental to learning and academic achievement. Study shows that the odds of graduating after having attended small classes for 4 years were increased by about 80%. Furthermore, the impact of attending a small class was especially noteworthy for students from low-income homes. Contention 3 is jobs. Step 1A, expand job markets. Increased investment in infrastructure creates substantial employment opportunities. According to Liang 2020, 27 million urban workers have lost their jobs by March 2020, and tens of millions of migrant workers are still yet to find jobs and return to the cities. First, internet infrastructure in poor regions spurs various new industries, leading to more occupations and the reduction of poverty. China e-commerce centers known as Taobao villages enable poor population to sell their agricultural products and specialties online. In 2015, 780 Taobao villages employed more than 1 million people and included more than 200,000 active online store owners. Comparatively, in 2019, the number of Taobao villages grew to 4,310, and active online shops totaled to more than 660,000, according to Kane 2015. In addition, an often cited statistic notes that every $1 billion in highway spending can directly and indirectly create up to 13,000 jobs a year, effectively helping the vast number of unemployed out of their income status quo and thus preventing them from getting impoverished. Supplement B promotes job accessibility. Transportation infrastructure provides convenience and cuts commuting time for workers, stabilizing employees' economic source. According to Bosher 2015, commuting time has emerged as the single strongest factor in the odds of escaping poverty, and low-income households are more sensitive to the change of job accessibility by transit. According to Johnson 2009, the access to retail jobs by transit increased on average by 11 times. Contention 4 is welfare inefficient. Subpoint A, DBAL population mistargeting is serious. According to Gao 2014, the mistargeting rate was 73% in 2002 and 76% in 2007. Inefficiency in the administration process and corruption among government officials may be among the top reasons for such mistargeting. According to Smith 2020, a separate study found that an incredible 86% of 2009 rural DBAL recipients were actually ineligible. According to Quinn 2016, such leakage was nearly exclusively originated from strong personal ties between administrators and ineligible recipients. Supplement B, welfare dependency reduces propensity to get jobs. According to Smith 2020, because of the strict means testing requirements, DBAL recipients are often effectively prevented from investing in supposedly frivolous things such as cell phones, computers, and education that will bolster their chances of moving into regular paid employment. Recipients are thus confined to a permanent underclass. Thus, we negate.
Lost fire, please.
Okay. Judges ready? Movements ready? Females ready? Our time starts now. So my first question for you is that how is infrastructure a medical problem when there is enough, and the main problem is the lack of high quality doctors?
So do you know that infrastructure actually includes the services provided such as healthcare and education? According to Zhou 2008, infrastructure can be divided as economic and social ones. The former refers to the public utilities such as electricity, telecommunications, water supply, sanitary and drainage, public engineering, etc. And while the latter refers to education, medical care, and health services. So their service provided by infrastructure actually counts as infrastructure. So the whole education service is infrastructure, training teachers included. So actually increasing teacher quality is going to be subsumed into infrastructure.
Well, the problem is how can the teacher be attracted to the rural areas?
Okay, I think it's our turn to ask the question now.
Okay.
Okay, so how is governmental subsidies, which is more money in hand, going to help the poor when there's hospital overcrowding?
Because what we're talking about is like in rural areas, and the only way that we can attract high quality doctors is to increase government subsidies. And so like this way we can attract those high quality doctors to rural areas where people can get like access to those doctors. And another question for you is that how is overcrowding problem still exist in terms of education when each class only averages 35 students?
We've already stated in our constructive speech that more than 40% of classes in primary and middle schools were oversized in Shenzhen, and in China's most populated province, Hunan, the average class size is more than 100. So I want to ask, where did your data come from, indicating that there were 35 students in a class?
We will get the evidence at, actually I have it now. It's according to MAC 2020. We can send the link to the chat.
Okay. The former question, I want to ask, in the case of terminal disease that requires urgent and immediate treatments and sanitary equipments, what can the poor do when there's not enough room or equipment, just medical resources like that in hospitals? Is more money in hand gonna help them on that?
Well, there is already enough infrastructure for hospitals, and as we said, even if the poor, like even if someone went to the hospital, there is not enough high quality doctors because doctors are treating like about 200 patients a day, and so like even if there is, okay.
Speaker 3, please. So pro side, do you need any prep time?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So, judges ready, opponents ready, my teammate ready, my time starts now. For our framework, the judge should be focuses on reducing the harm and incidence of poverty for the most vulnerable members of the society. Our opponents didn't provide a framework, so this debate should be using our framework. If we prove that increased spending on welfare programs solves poverty, then we should win the debate. Now moving on to their first contention, resettlement. First, a resettlement program does not alleviate poverty. According to Zhou et al. 2019, first, the proportion of registered villagers with illness and disability was as high as 40%. Few jobs are suited for them in the city. Second, the infrastructure and public services for those villagers left behind are still in need for improvement, which may lead to a strain on financial resources. Second, even if your income is increased, the benefit was offset by increased expense and debt. According to Low et al. 2016, after resettlement, average annual expenditure is more than double to 24,000 yuan per year. On average, the resettlers borrow 40,000 yuan each year. And third, infrastructure alone does not alleviate poverty. The essence of resettlement program is the act of moving people there. Building houses in the southeast of China is hotel to north of poverty unless people were reallocated here. But moving people are not infrastructure. However, the social assistance sector of welfare programs include housing aids. The impact is turning to grow. And the actual program itself is relocated less than 30%, but lied about 100%. When reporting data, there was still a big gap about between the actual progress and the work that is happening. And moving on to the second contention, education. First, the evidence is from 2016 about Shenzhen, so it is out of date and should not be used. Second, China does not have school overcrowding problem right now. According to MAC at 2020, each class average only 35 students. So China is building more schools now, so more spending are not required. For example, according to He at 2020, the Sichuan provincial government has invested nearly 2 billion yuan into building new schools in just one province. For the main problem isn't that there isn't enough schools, it is that students cannot afford to go to them. Both welfare are needed. According to MAC at 2020, after middle school, parents must pay for public high schools. Fifth, in terms of welfare solves the problem. According to China Educational Center at 2018, China enables students over 6 years old in nationwide to have a free educational at both primary school and junior secondary school. The policy is funded by the government, tuition is free, but it is a welfare program. And also, according to International Education in 2020, according to the 2019 government work plan, China separately increase fiscal support for vocational colleges and will establish a national scholarship for secondary vocational education. Now moving on to your circumcision jobs. They said that with an increase of spending on infrastructure, job opportunities will increase, which will solve poverty. However, job creation does not mean employment to the poor. According to Polix and Bevins at 2010, number of jobs supported by infrastructure spending is output from the job model and a measure of gross, not net, job creation. If a given amount of infrastructure spending supports 1 million jobs in total, that does not mean the economy as a whole will see a net increase of 1 million. Rather, a portion of this 1 million jobs may be pulled from currently employed sectors of the economy, which means that existing workers take the job. Second, China wasted 6.8 trillion in infrastructure. According to Enderlin in 2014, government construction has generated 6.8 trillion in wasted investment since 2009, according to a report by government researcher. The second subpoint is said about transportation increased job. However, China infrastructure investment are ineffective and inefficient. According to Wang at 2017, only 28% of the project were economically productive. China's top economic regulatory agency has also observed high waste and inefficiency in China's investment. For corruption is common for infrastructure construction. According to Wang in 2017, local residents noted the practice of using substandard materials while charging for high quality material is commonplace. Now moving on to the contention welfare inefficient. Even if there is mistargeting, there was still a reduction in poverty. Poverty gap and severity are decreasing. According to Gao at 2014, poverty gap and severity were reduced by 16% and 25%. Respective 2007. And for your welfare dependency argument, they have no evidence. It's only hypothesis and a theory without any cases and quantified evidence to prove it. Plus the evidence, plus it should count as invalid. And for those reasons, we strongly urge the pro ballot. Thank you.
We run out of time for 1 minute.
Homicide, right? One minute.
Opponents ready, judge ready, partner ready. My rebuttal starts now. First of all, about the framework, you mentioned our framework in our case. Our framework is the effectiveness of each approach. Alleviating poverty is solely the most important value considered space, and also the resolution in China limited. Also, we must focus on long-term development, and we should prevent them from falling back into poverty. So this is our framework, and we believe we will win under both frameworks. So first of all, about your first contention, safety net. You said that even with mistargeting, it is very efficient, but we believe that it is actually, first of all, its process is intrusive and dehumanizing, deters many from even applying to deball. According to Smith 2020, almost all recipients were interviewed mentioned how
stigma affect their lives and express their shame and despair as a result of their default status and forced disclosure and their privacy. However, while the poor don't claim welfare due to stigma does not stop the unqualified. So 86% of people receiving DBAR are thought to be ineligible, with just 11% of those who are eligible for DBAR receive it. So how are you supposed to say that it is wise to further invest in it? Yes, it has been effective, but you've already said that the coverage is very high and it has already reached a saturation point. So why should we invest further in such a measure that causes that deters the people who need it from applying and has serious problems of dehumanizing and stigmatizing and corruption and also distargeting? Okay, moving on to your second contention of healthcare. We believe that healthcare problems can. We have already said that hospital overcrowding is a very severe problem in China. And also, you've mentioned the lack of doctors, and my partner already responded to you in the crossfire that, according to our definition, actually, according to most definition, infrastructure includes the service provided and the people who provide services. So, actually, training more doctors is included in the increased spending of infrastructure. So why are you contending for that? And also, you mentioned that hospitals are overcrowded and they're understaffed. So basically, your contention, that contention fails. And also, you said that the coverage rate is already high. So why do we need more? And you said that we need more. So how much do we need? Is 1% coverage enough? And moving on, your last contention about teachers, you're talking about the pay rise to good teachers because good teachers have financial incentives. Yes, but how do you prove it? That it's not the harsh rural environment that makes the teachers unwilling to go to rural schools. How can you prove it? And how can you quantify the financial incentives of teachers? And moving on to rebuttal. First of all, you said that PR and infrastructure offers no jobs. That we have to say is not right. Also, you said that infrastructure has already reached a saturation point, but the inequality still exists between the rural and urban areas. The quantity and quality of transportation system are both much better in the urban and the rural areas. In order to reduce regional quality, more investment in transportation should be targeted to poor inland provinces, especially in the rural areas. And also, moving on to your point about PER, you said it does not generate jobs, but it does. We've already mentioned that in our case, but we'll say it again. We've said that there is a much overlap between the concentrated poverty and ecological fragile area. So you cannot possibly stop the poor from going into the cities because there's not even the basic necessity for survival in the regions where they used to live. People there have to sacrifice long-term improvements such as asset accumulation or the education of children in exchange for short-term survival. So education is not their priority, survival is. And you know that spatial poverty is actually one of the main reasons of chronic poverty in China. It's due to the remote infertile soil and weak economic interrogation that makes it difficult to make progress of high cost for using either general poverty reduction measures such as DBAR and medical care programs. And also about the increased expenditures. Apart from those who have moved as a part of earlier schemes, non-households contributed more than 10,000 RMB to their cost of their apartment, while some resellers reported that they received none in response to the high. And also, in response to the high living costs, the production and living problem at the first stage of migration was resolved by making favorable policies to get rid of migrants worrying about future jobs. Thank you.
Crossfire, please.
Oh, I believe I have the first question. So time starts now. So how is DBAR harmful if it reduces poverty rate and severity by 9%?
But according to our data, the mistargeting rate is about 70 to 86%.
Yeah, no matter if there's any, even if there is mistargeting, even if there's corruption, however, poverty rate and poverty gap are still decreased. So it's inarguable that it still decreased and alleviate poverty.
We are saying that according to our framework, we focus on the effectiveness of alleviating poverty, which include that the people shouldn't fall back into poverty. So how are you going to solve the problems about dependency on welfare?
Do you actually have any real case or quantified evidence about how is dependency happening? You only provided a theory and a hypothesis without any real evidence supporting it.
And also about, may I ask a question?
Yes.
And also about you said that our evidence of school overcrowding is a specific situation in Shandong province, but about your contention in educational infrastructure, you said that we've already spent enough money in educational infrastructure, such as you used the case in Sichuan. How do you say that it's not a specific situation? And you talked about free education, but it's actually education in rural areas is not free. Due to the lack of local revenue, schools have to cover costs by charging fees directly to the students. This makes it expensive, even harder for households to afford. By building infrastructure and increasing employment, we will boost the economy and improve the local revenue so that this education will be free. So how do you encourage?
Can I answer? So first of all, for Shandong cases, I did not say that it's not specific. I said that that evidence is out of date due to it's the evidence from 2016, and I provided evidence from 2020 that says the classroom now is not overcrowded.
Also, there is another problem. Thanks for your answer. And another card used, Bivens 14.
What?
It is an American card. Bivens 14. It is a card in the US, so your last rebuttal does not stand. It is an American card.
Wait. My rebuttal against what condition? Okay, never mind. I believe
you used in your last.
Okay, I believe
it is an US card.
I think I can ask a question. So you mentioned that people who are applying for DBAL feel shameful, but can you tell me how many people that feel shameful? How many people stop applying for DBAL because of shamefulness?
We've said in our rebuttal, 86% who are receiving DBAL are thought to be ineligible, while 11% of those are eligible for DBAL receive it. Only 11%.
You didn't answer my question. You didn't answer my question.
89% of people who are supposed to receive DBAL didn't receive it because of stigma.
1 minute prep, please. Thank you.
Okay, your time's up.
Okay, so judges ready, opponents ready, teammates ready, my speech starts now. So like, first of all, answer to their rebuttal of our first contention, which is about DBAL. They talked about how little people are receiving DBAL and it is not sustained. And they also said that it is not wise and it's dehumanizing. However, just to answer to their first point, there was already a reduction in poverty and poverty gap severity. Secondly, the main topic of this debate is to reduce poverty. According to 2014, according to GAO 2014, even with mistargeting, there was reduction in poverty, and the poverty gap and severity were reduced by 16 and 25 percentage points respectively in 2007. The benefit that they received was substantially higher in 2007 than in 2002. Also, a survey conducted by the NBS shows that 3.8 of urban residents received DBAL in 2007. And among those recipients, 73.4 received the benefit for less than 3 months, 16.4 between 3 and 6 months, and less than 4% for more than 1 year. So it is, first of all, effective as alleviating poverty despite the problem they mentioned. And also, according to Green 2017, Oxford University had done a carefully said that 40% of all current job will fall into victim within 15 years. And they also mentioned how that it is not wise. Well, DBAL requirement is aimed at reducing poverty. And the analogy for this could be someone giving money to a beggar. Is that dehumanizing? We are using our resources to support the poor. And so that is not a valid point. And secondly, in our contention of healthcare, they said that overcrowding was a problem, and they also said that the training process is count as infrastructure. However, the problem is not that we're lacking of those training process. We are like, even if you build all of those hospitals, doctors won't come because you are not increasing their salaries, and which is welfare program, and doctors won't come to those rural areas. The deficiency in doctors has taken on more urgency as Chinese government grapples with the mounting health problem of the vast population. And welfare programs solve this problem. According to Haifang 2019, by 2017, more than 1 billion people in China were covered by catastrophic medical insurance, and 11 million people received extra benefit for more than 30 yuan. And in 2017, through the medical aid, 56.2 million people received subsidies, and 35.2 million people received average of 1,757 yuan. And in our education contention, they talked about how overcrowding is a problem. And well, the problem is, again, how the education is underfunded because there is a lack of quality of teacher. And because there is not enough funding to welfare programs, teachers are not attracted. This is the same thing with our medical argument, where education welfare programs in China are underfunded according to Untitled and 2019. The gap between rural and urban teacher salaries benefit has led to one-way mobility of rural teachers. According to a sample survey of school hardship areas National Education Monitoring Group, rural teachers' additional income only 13%, and the key school teachers had as high as 100%. And for these reasons, we're pro-ballot. Thank you.
Will you run our prep time, please? Stop prep time, please. My summary speech starts now. In our contention 1, we talked about PAR, which moves farmers out of their villages and into consolidated settlements and transforming their livelihood activities to non-farm activities with higher income. In our opponent's speech, they addressed that there's going to be a high cost of after farmers moved into communities, but we actually have empirical evidence which states that farmers pay a very low cost or even no cost at all after they moved into communities, and my partner will give you data in her later speech. And in our second contention about school overcrowding, we stress that it would be hard for the poor to advance higher education, and the only solution is the construction of new schools. Our opponents address that the problem of school overcrowding doesn't exist now, but please note that providing online classes to poor children in rural areas by equipping internet infrastructure in rural areas can help those who can't afford education in school in remote and mountainous areas. And moving on to our contention 3 about jobs, we stress that internet infrastructure, both internet and transportation infrastructure in poor regions spurs various new industries, leading to more occupations and the reduction of poverty. So its effect in creating new jobs is not to be ignored. And second, transportation promotes job accessibility by cutting commuting time, stabilizing the employee's economic source. In our contention 4, we talk about the inefficiency of welfare, centering around the mistargeting and corruption and develop programs and welfare dependency. Our opponents said that the impact of corruption is trivia compared to the mass number of people lifted out of poverty, but we believe that the impact of corruption is not to be ignored as it directly hurts the poor. The mistargeting rate was 73% in 2002 and 76% in 2007. And in an incredible 86% of 2009 royalty bar recipients were actually ineligible. And in our rebuttal speech to their contentions, their first contention about safety nets, we believe that DBAO is actually dehumanizing and stop people from even applying as they trigger stigma. And also the corruption problem is serious. And about their second and third contention, I believe there were some similarities, so I'll address to them together. First, service related to infrastructure construction are actually included in infrastructure itself. So both the training of doctors and teachers are subsumed to infrastructure construction, which means advocating for increased quality is actually arguing for the concept. And also, our opponents didn't provide evidence and data concerning the financial incentives of doctors and teachers, which means they failed to link a salary deficiency as the hinder that prevents teacher from teaching in poor areas or doctors to work in rural hospitals. So we believe it is a convalescent. Thank you.
Brown cross.
Okay, so opponents ready? Judges ready? I think our time could start now. So our first question for you is how is corruption connected to like alleviating poverty?
Corruption hurts the poor directly. One increase in standard deviation in corruption draws the economy backward 8 years. I have a specific card for that. Do you want the data?
Pardon?
Can you speak louder?
An increase in one standard deviation in corruption draws the economy back for 8 years, and it hurts the poor directly. Do you want specific data for that?
But corruption happens every year and happens a lot in China. However, China's GDP keep increasing, so this claim is obviously invalid.
I think you missed the internal link. We're talking about corruption hurting the poor, causing inequalities, thus increasing Gini coefficient. The financial inequality in China is greater, and then thus leading to poverty.
Yeah, but however, our evidence has clearly proved that DBAO has alleviated poverty by 9%, even for there's corruption, even for there's mistargeting. You want me to read that source again?
No, but we believe, here's the point. We believe that your framework is a narrowed framework. Our framework focuses on the alleviation of all kinds of poverty, while you only focus on the most vulnerable groups. I think that is a narrowed framework. And our framework focuses on not only on the current situation, but also the long-term development. And we focus on eliminating the root cause. And that is what PAR does. PAR helps solve the problem.
Yeah, we clearly stated in our rebuttal that your data is inaccurate because the actual program itself relocated less than 30%, but those reports lied about 100%.
Yeah, that's exactly why we should increase spending in PAR. You said that
increased spending does not solve corruption and fraud. Okay, increased spending never solves corruption and fraud. It increases it. Okay.
How do you prove that
Can we ask your question now? Thank you.
Do you want me to ask a question, or do you want to ask a question?
We want to ask a question. So, DBAO and welfare programs are already saturated in China. Their coverage is already very high. You fail to prove they're underfunded. So why is more investment necessary?
Do you have evidence that it's well funded?
You said that contention, you failed to prove that it's underfunded. And you said in your constructive speech that the coverage is extremely high and has been effective, but you provided no evidence that it is still effective and more effective than infrastructure.
Okay, so to answer your first question, which is about like DBAO is necessary for increased spending. So according to David Green at 2017, Oxford University academic Carol Frey stated that up to 40% of all current jobs will fall into victims of automation, which means that public safety net has an increasing demand than ever before.
Time's up.
Can I use all of my press time? rebuttal 没有 account.
对，你这样说我们问的时候，他们说
They did not answer our rebuttal against the job of other benefits.
我讲你 summary 最后就说我们赢了什么什么什么，他们说
Can you guys mute yourself?
summary 一下就是写东西。
We want a
Hey guys, you're muted. We can hear you.
speech 加油。
Your time's up.
Can you hear me? Judges ready? Opponents ready? Team ready? Time starts now. For the framework, the judge should be focuses on reducing the harm and instance of poverty for the most vulnerable members of the society. Our framework should be used because it focuses on a larger scale. And even if we're using this, we should still win the debate. If we prove that increased spending on welfare programs solves poverty, then we should win the debate. And we have clearly won the debate by saying how much poverty has been reduced, and the medical contention by saying that those doctors are not coming to rural areas. Education and also the educational contention because their evidence are out of date and they have no status quo evidence. And also their PAR contention by saying their data are also false. And the main clashes of debate is job increase and deval. They provided all of the jobs that will be increased through infrastructure project, but we simply tell you that it does not solve poverty, but cause poverty. According to COS at 2019, in a study by Oxford at 2016, it suggested that over half of the infrastructure investment in China has costs that are larger than the benefit it generate, which means that the project destroy economic value instead of generating it. They did not answer to your rebuttal against jobs, welfare inefficient, education contingent, and simply just repeated their point in their summary speeches, which proves that it is ineffective and inefficient. Now moving on to deval. Even with this targeting, there was still a reduction in poverty rate, as I mentioned. According to poverty gap according to Gao at 2014, poverty gap and severity were reduced by 9%. The benefit they received was substantially higher in 2007 than in 2002, which in turn leads to greater poverty reduction. So it proves that not only does deval solve poverty, it also is increasing and it's getting better. And now moving on further, even as they said, many eligible are not receiving it. It's exactly proves that we should increase our spending for it so that all the eligible residents are receiving it. This proves that historically deval is effective at alleviating poverty. And China doesn't have school overcrowding problem. According to Mark at 2020, educational welfare programs in China are underfunded, which leads to loss of high quality teachers. And that is the major cause of poverty and traps people into the cycle of poverty. And for those reasons, we strongly urge a pro ballot. Thank you.
Run the rest of
Time's up.
Opponent ready, judge ready, partner ready. When my final focus starts now, first of all, with the contention of debal, they failed to prove that debal is underfounded, and also we already said that the treatment testing, leaving large groups of people who actually need debal not receiving financial help. So debal is ineffective, and they also said that debal is already saturated. And we're not saying that debal is ineffective. We're just saying that it's not as efficient and it has its own flaws. So they've said that PR and infrastructure is not good, but they offered no other alternatives to their long-term development. So I see no reason why not to try. And also about their framework, even if you believe in their framework, we also win the debate. And also we said that their framework is a narrow framework for the only focus on the most vulnerable groups. For people are trapped. We already said in our case that spatial poverty is one of the main reasons of chronic poverty in China. And by giving them welfare, giving them debal and healthcare benefits and educational benefits, they're actually trapping them on their infertile soil and trapping them in extremely remote areas where they have no access to basic life necessities and can only sacrifice their long-term improvements. But using PR, we relocate the farmers into areas closer to towns, industrial parks, and tourist attractions, and other areas more convenient of production and living conditions. After the migration, most migrants can resolve their subsistence problem in the second year because their production condition has changed significantly, and the government universally adopt a series of assistance measures. So PR do generate jobs, and the living costs do not double. And according to our data here, there are regulations to control the resettlement cost. And apart from those who have moved as a part of earlier schemes, none of the households contributed more than 10,000 RMB, while some resettlers reported that paid nothing. And finally, about their contention of healthcare and education, they failed to provide link between the salary deficiencies and why the teachers and doctors don't come, and also they fail to link this to poverty alleviation. So thusly, we believe this is definitely a con value.
I think we've had the result.
Oh, are we gonna disclose
So-
the results now, or do they have like a ceremony or something?
I'm not really sure.
You will give me the result now.
Yes, sir.
So give them privately to the host, or like announcing it.
Let me ask.
Shall we ask Felicia?
Yeah, I think we should ask her.
Yeah, I think we can announce the votes now, the results now.
Okay. So we're gonna announce the results now. Who is the chair? Like, do we have a chair judge right now?
I think Lewis would be the
Okay, so
leading judge.
I'll just do the announcement. Okay, so it was actually a 3 side, I mean 3 votes for the con side and then 2 for the pro side. So I guess the judges would give their reasons and all that. So the con team actually won. Congratulations.
Congratulations to the con side and also to the pro side who made it to the final. I'll just start briefly on my vote. I ended up voting for con because I think for the I buy a lot of pros arguments of how welfare system has demonstrated success in alleviating poverty. But I think the reason I ended up voting for con is they made a very clear argument about why the major welfare system has reached a saturation, and it's very important for the government to take a shift in the investment of alleviating poverty into the infrastructure. I think that's the major reason I ended up voting for con.
I also voted for the con, basically for the major reason, especially like the very high mistargeting rate. Although you say that there's still a lot of positive effects of that welfare program, but for me, I mean, there's still high mistargeting rate. That's you're losing a lot of finance or the money in that one. So that has to be addressed. So that's indirectly or directly, it's going to affect the poor people. So that's on that one, I voted for the con side. And then basically your pro's second contention about lack of doctors and lack of quality teachers, I think so con address in a way that they said it's basically a service infrastructure. So that was being included in their contentions. So these were the 2 major reasons I voted for concept. But overall, it was really tight for me to decide. But based upon my understanding of your arguments, I voted for the con. Thank you.
Okay, so I think I'll just give mine as well. So I also went in for the con side. One of the main reasons why I actually went in for the con side was because I personally felt their framework was very strong with regards to the fact that they had a long term in alleviating poverty in order not to fall back into poverty. So that was what actually made me going for them. And then also with the pro team, I also felt that you didn't argue your healthcare and the lack of doctors, I mean, very well with regards to your contentions. And the fact that the con made also a statement that the government also, as Rosian said, the government has to shift from the welfare, I mean, the DBAL, and then go into a different form of investment to see how poverty can be elevated in China. In all ways, I think you guys actually did a great job. It was actually a tough decision to make, but all the same, I think you all did great, and then congratulations in your future tournament as well. All the best.
So I'll go next, and I personally lean to the pro side, so I think. And the two major voting issues for me is the one people and the one related to job creation.
Excuse me,
Right?
Riven.
Yeah.
You vote for con or pro?
I vote for pro. So me and Sandra will vote for pro, and the rest will just vote for con. So I'll continue. So the point of like, I think it goes to the pro side because ultimately their evidence and the impacts are not as solid to me because like they've stated the 9% decrease theoretically. One of the suggestions for the side is that you guys can address like how mistargeting probably be like solved. You guys do have a solid impact, so emphasize on the impact rather than like mentioning mistargeting and how it's not really solving now. Also, I think the con needs to elaborate a little more so with more evidence on like why it's saturated and like emphasize on the logically saturation, like use evidence to support that. And the part about job creation, I think it goes to the website because they've mentioned that throughout the debate and give tons of evidence. But I think overall, like those teams like did a very great job, and congratulations to them.
Okay, so I think that overall both teams like really did excellent and it was really like a tough decision. But at the end of the day, I went for pro because personally I felt that they convinced me with regards to their health and education claim. I would say that with regards to the DBAL, one thing I even wrote here was the fact that okay, you keep saying that it's still taking people out of poverty, but so why then? But then, in spite of the corruption rates in the DBAL, okay, this goes to pro. So if there's still like corruption in it, why do you apply or why do you opt for more funds instead of like a reform? So this is something that like you can take, because I get the fact that you kept saying that okay, in spite of the corruption, there's still like enough impacts being made, but why should there be more funds included instead of like a reform? And then for con, I don't know, but I felt that you refuse to like properly tackle pros claims. I don't know if it's because you actually had some of the claims in your constructive speech. That was what in the end that made me like go for pro, because I felt that they had the full package as compared to con that like sort of like lacked or slacked in some aspect with regards to like the delivery and all that. Yeah.
Then I think this race is over.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Have a nice
Thank
day.
you.